I'm back for more adventures in the Life of a Creator Savings Challenge book, and as the number of challenges dwindle, I'm throwing a new one into the mix. I've also got the Paint by Sticker book, so it's time for more story time. Are you ready? Let's go! Welcome back to Ready Budget Go. My name is Drew, and here on this channel we talk about household budgeting, saving money, and achieving our financial goals. So if any of those sound like something you're interested in, please consider subscribing, hit the like button, and leave me a comment down below because I'd love to hear from you. We're back in the Life of a Creator Savings Challenge book again. This is a collaboration savings challenge book that was put together by Marlene over at Snow Gardener 307. I have been kind of Franken-challenging in different challenges as I finish some of these up, and I'm going to add in one more, which is the thank you that comes with the book if you buy it from Marlene. And on the back of this is a roll and save challenge that has a bunch of different houseplants in it because Marlene does love her gardening. And I decided that this is going to be a D20, and I will roll again if I get less than a 5. So I just need to find somewhere to put it. This challenge is still open. This one is done. I think I'm going to stick it right here. Let me grab a paper clip. So whenever this one comes up, we will do the roll and save challenge. Okay, but we've still got plenty more savings to do. So let's go back to the end, to the booty bank, because this is where we always start. And this challenge is by Liz and Les. And I've decided that I'm going in reverse order now. So I'm going to go to the next highest amount, which is 28. So I will cross that off and save $28. I am putting about $100 toward my goals from this book this week. So 25, 27, 28, and if it goes a little over, that's okay. Okay, so now that we've done that, and I crossed off the 28, yes I did, okay. Let's go back to where the clip is. And the clip is on the Rock and Roll Queen. So this is a roll and save challenge. I have done all the D20s and all the D8s. I'm working on the D6s, so let me get out the dice. And I always like to use the ones that come with this book. When you order this from Marlene, you do get a set of 7 dice. You get a D4, a D6, a D8, 2 D10s, a D12, and a D20. And you don't get to choose the color, but they will all match. So I didn't pick this black color, but they're all the same. Okay. And just because I didn't pick it doesn't mean I don't like it, just for the record. Okay. So rolling the D6 here, and we got a 1. That is the 5th time we've rolled a 1 for this challenge. And I need to use a Sharpie because my tombos do not hold up on this paper. Okay, so $1 for the D6. I'm just going to put a 1 back and take a 2. Okay, and we'll move on after I pull the clip off. And next up is my challenge. So this is Bob's Bangin' Burger Bar. Or, sorry, it's Buster's Bangin' Burger Bar. I don't know why, I must have been thinking about Bob's Burgers. Okay, so at Buster's Bangin' Burger Bar, you get to make your own burger. And you can put on it whatever you want from all these toppings. If you want the topping on it, then you color it in and save $1. If you don't want the topping on your burger, then you cross it out and you save $3 for wasting food. So far I have said no to mayonnaise, disgusting, soy sauce, I like it, just not on my burger, ham, too much meat, and an egg, ew. So next up is French fries. And I don't know where this tradition started, but I do put French fries on my burger. I have done that ever since I was a teenager. I had a supervisor who was from Ohio, and she said she always did it, and I had never heard of that before. But I did it, and I liked it, so then I started doing it, and it's been that way ever since. So I'm just filling in the fries here, coloring them in. Crispy, golden French fries. Okay. And because I said yes to that topping, I will save $1 more. So I'm going to put back 9 and take out a 10. And I've still got 15 more toppings to go, so quite a while on this challenge. Okay, these two are done. We did the Christmas word search, so now we're on to Janelle from Janelle Ray Budgets and her scratch and roll and save. I've done all the scratches, so now I'm just doing the rolls, and I've said that this is a D20. So let me get out the dice tower here, which is backward, and roll the D20. And we've got 3. It was almost going to be 16, but it decided to be kind. So I will record $3, and that is what I'll save. 2 and 3. Okay. We'll move on to the next challenge, which is from Danny at Craftco Budgets. There's only 2 scratchers left here, the left and the right, so I will do the one on the right. $5. Okay. So only one more scratcher left to go on this challenge. So the next time it comes up, that'll be the last. Okay. So let's grab $5. And we'll move on to the next one. And we're already back to the booty bank. And when I come around to it naturally, I go for the low number. So I'm going to take that $10. So we'll cross that off. And I will, let's see, what can I do here? Take back a 10 and put in a 20. So we're almost halfway there already. And most of it's gone into the Booty Bank Challenge. So how many more spots do I have left here? I have the 18, the 20, the 21, and the 25, and the 26. So just 5 more trips to the Booty Bank, and then that'll be done. Okay, so now we're back to the front. This first challenge was one of Marlene's, but I finished that already. So now I replaced that with this Christmas Savings Challenge that she sent me last year. It's $50 in total, and I've got 2 left, and they're both presents. So I'm hoping they're good presents. Let's see what we've got here. $4, that's not bad. Okay. So clean this up. So only one more on this one, and it will be done. So let's take 46, and we'll put in a 50. 45, 46, and 50. Now it's Kiss My Heiny. This is by Shannon at 307 Design Studio, who is Marlene's sister-in-law. And I've decided that each of these is $5, and we're going to stick this right here on her side. And we'll put in $5. Okay, move on to the next. This is the Birds and the Bees. This is a collab within a collab. It's by Mischief Managed Budgets and Champagne's Corner. And I gave up on rolling. I'm just going around the board, and it looks like the next one that we need to do is this little blue bird. And if you land on a bird, you go play Wren's Aviary. So roll a d12. Let me mark off the bird first. Okay. So we're going to roll a d12. So we need the dice tower. It does not want to cooperate. There we go. And the d12. And we got a 6. 6, back 3 spaces. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Forward 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. Back 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. So that will go on forever. I don't know exactly what to do with that. So I am going to just roll it again. And if I get a 6 or a 3, I'm just going to roll until I get something that's not one of those. A 3, of course. 11. Save any amount. Okay. So let's see. What do I want to do? So I've got 7 here. So I'm going to put back 7, take out a 10. So I will have saved $3. Okay. So there we go. So that's it for this one. We've got 2 more $1 saves. We've got 1 more bird and a bee, which will be over here for Champagne's challenge. Then we've got a whole bunch of completed challenges, and that brings us around to the 25 to Thrive. This is by Taylor Louise, and it is a habit tracker challenge. I don't really track habits, Not in a savings challenge binder anyway. So I've decided that the habit that I'm tracking is that every time I come to this challenge, I'm going to save $5 and mark off a cloud. So let's do that. Okay. Next up, now we're on the D20 roll and save challenge from Marlene. So let me get out the D20. Well, I decided it was a D20. You can roll any die you want. And we've got a 19, of course. Okay, well, at least I don't roll twice. Let's see here. Is this gonna... I better use a Sharpie. I'm gonna use one of the ones that goes under the paper clip here. 19. All right. I'm just gonna take 19, I think. 10, 15, 17, 19. And now I will condense the 10 and 2 5s for a 20. I couldn't math it in my head, so it's easier just to do it that way. So we are up to $84. So we've got 16 left to save. Next up, we've got the $50 plus dice roll. This is by pinkycloth.co. So I am just going through the numbers right now, and then I'll do the dice rolls here at the end. So I'm going to save this $1 here. So I'll put these two twos back, and grab a 5. Okay. We finished Donna's. We finished... Oh no, we're back to the Rock and Roll Queen. Okay. So let's get that D6 out, and let's see if we can roll something other than a 1. Nope, it's a 1. Okay. Another $1. Well, the third roll has on each row has been something other than a 1, so maybe it's meant to be. Now we're back to my challenge, Buster's Bangin' Burger Bar. Now we've got lettuce, and I absolutely will take lettuce on my burger. So let's color this in. It's going to take me a minute here because I'm not terribly good at coloring. And I frequently go outside the lines, but I do the best I can. Okay. So that beautiful head of lettuce is $1. I'll take a 1 and put in a 2. Okay. Next up, we finished Paula's, we finished Ira's, we finished budgeting just because. So now we're back to Janelle. So let's get the D20 back out. Hopefully not another 19. Yeah. I had a feeling that might happen. So, well, it's not a 19, but it is a 20. So let's write in 20. And this didn't have to be a D20 challenge, but it's been kicking me in the pants ever since. So it's going to be a little bit of an extra savings in the life of a creator this week, but that is perfectly fine. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 left to go for Janelle's. So next week, we will start with Danny at Craftco Budgets, and we will finish her challenge. Well, we'll do the booty bank first, then we'll do Craftco Budgets, and then we'll go from there. So let me put this die away and close the book. Let's see. There we go. Nope, overshot it. There we go. Let's get out the binder and put in our 107. Is that what I counted? 50, 70, 90, 107. Yep. So I'm going to consolidate this real quick. And actually, since I'm here, I'll just do the whole envelope. So 107. So let's see what we've got in here. We have 2,000, 100, 200, 300, 400, 20, 40, 5, 47, 49, 50. 2,450. So I'm going to take the 20s, the 5, the twos and the one, and put a 50 in. Okay, so next week we'll be able to get a 500 placeholder in here. And all in, this will probably save me close to $3,000, but that is because I'm using expensive dice. I have put two more challenges in, and I'm doing the booty bank exactly as it is written. So your mileage will vary depending on how you do that book, if you decide to do it. So I'm also going to stick the stickers in here for Georgette. And that will wrap up the life of a creator, but I will be right back with the Paint by Sticker book, and I'll give you a little more insight into my childhood and how my attitudes about money evolved as I was growing up. So now I'm back in the Paint by Sticker book, and as I did last week, I'm going to save $2 for every sticker I put down, and I'm going to put down 50 stickers, or at least I think it's 50. I kind of lost count, and you'll see me kind of count the stickers that I've put down along the way just to make sure that I'm still on track. But I think it's 50. So in the last week, I talked about my early childhood and kind of the impressions that I got about money from my parents, particularly my mother, because she was the sole custodial parent. And so now this week, I'm going to talk about later childhood and moving on into adolescence and maybe even early adulthood. It kind of depends on how long things take. So, the last subject that I want to talk about as far as childhood goes is the concept of an allowance. I had an allowance for a while. It didn't last very long. I want to say I was probably 6 or 7 years old. So this would have been around 1988, 1989. And it was $1 a week. And I always had to ask for it. And that became kind of uncomfortable. Well, actually, it was really uncomfortable. Um, it wasn't automatic. And if I didn't ask for it, I didn't get it. And I always felt my mom kind of resented giving me an allowance, but it was her idea to begin with. And resent is a hard word. It's a harsh word. But it was always kind of I always felt like I was imposing when I asked for it. But for me, that was my only source of income, that I had as a kid. And my birthday is 3 weeks after Christmas. So if there was anything else I wanted the entire rest of the year, I had to have some way of paying for it or ask for it. And I was never really good about asking for things that I wanted. I kind of, was not a very materialistic child. I didn't always need to have the greatest toy. The things that I asked for tended to be bigger things. I remember asking for a Nintendo, and I remember asking for a trip to Disneyland. I got the Nintendo as a graduation present for finishing the first grade, so that would have been in 1989. Never did get to go to Disneyland, but it's okay. But I didn't ask for other things. I wasn't always asking for a new toy or, new action figures or anything like that. That just was never my thing. If I was going to ask for something, it was going to be something big, and it was something that I knew that I would use, not something that I figured I would just grow tired of. Because by the time I worked up the courage to ask for it, I'd already been wanting it a really long time. So, for example, when I asked for my first bicycle, I had been thinking about it for months by the time I finally got up the courage to ask my mom if I could have a bicycle. And then from there, it took quite a while to get the bicycle. Bikes were expensive back then. I don't think they're inexpensive now, per se, but I don't think the price has moved very much despite inflation. I think, when I got my bicycle, it was made in the USA. And now they're probably made overseas. But so the price hasn't budged much, but the dollar's worth a lot less now. So my bike that cost, $120 in 1988, that same bike would probably cost $120 now, but it's a whole lot easier to get your hands on $120 in 2025 than it was in the 80s. So, that allowance, at $1 a week, it really didn't go very far, even back then. There was one time that I lost a library book, and the library book cost $6 to replace. So for a month and a half, no allowance. Um, that doesn't mean that I didn't get anything during that time and afterward, but it was okay, well, you lost the book, so you have to replace it out of your allowance. I don't necessarily disagree with that philosophy, but it also means that that was a lot of money to me. I mean, imagine working for a month and a half to replace your book, to replace a book, one book, for a month and a half of allowance. So, you know, I think that an allowance, and this is just my own personal philosophy as someone who doesn't have kids, but in my view, an allowance is the money that you would normally spend on your kids for their wants that is given to them to manage themselves. And there's a certain age at which you can start to do this, and some of it does depend on maturity. Some 6-year-olds can handle it. Some kids probably aren't going to be ready for it until they're 12. So it's not a set time that starts. But this is for anything like candy or toys or books or anything a kid might want that uh is not, it's not something they're asking for Christmas or their birthday. So it introduces the concept of saving, and it also introduces the concept that money is finite. I think some parents, well, I know some parents believe that an allowance is earned for services rendered, right? For chores. But if the kid doesn't do their chores and you say, okay, no allowance, then do you also withhold buying them anything that they want? Or does the bag of chips end up in the shopping cart anyway at the supermarket? So things like that. Um, we never really got to that point in my household. My mom, I think, just decided that it was an idea that she wanted to implement, and so she did. And without that much thought into it, it didn't go very well. So eventually, the allowance just stopped. I quit asking for it because, I mean, eventually you get to an age where $1 a week just doesn't buy a whole lot. And I did chores. I helped out around the house. I did all my own laundry from a very early age. And I cleaned up the kitchen, I washed dishes, I swept, I vacuumed, the whole works. But I consider that just things that you do as a member of the household, not necessarily in exchange for money. Because now, as a grown man, I empty the dishwasher. Nobody pays me to do that. It's just something that I do because it has to get done. But I give myself an allowance out of money that I've earned for things that I want. So, okay, enough about allowance. So, the upshot of all of that is that from a very young age, I was really eager to earn my own money and to get to work and to um, earn a paycheck. And I knew that I was capable. I could do all kinds of things. I could do filing, I could do any kind of monotonous grunt work. I could rake leaves, but there's only so much opportunity for that for a kid who's 10. And I wasn't very enterprising, and I didn't have access to a lot of the tools that I would need to earn that kind of money. So, what I really wanted was a job. I wanted someplace where I could go and earn money, whether it was stocking shelves or, sweeping or whatever, but, someplace ideally that was indoors that I could get to. But no, I mean, you can't hire a 10-year-old, right? It's against the law, and those laws exist for a reason. But I was champing at the bit to have a job of my own, to earn money of my own. So when I turned 16, that's exactly what I did. Now, it took a while. I was midway through my sophomore year of high school when I turned 16, and I already had a full plate of commitments. I was taking a lot of classes that year, and my weekends were stocked with volunteer work and clubs from school. And so just, I didn't really have a whole lot of time for a job. So come summer break, I decided to apply for a job at the place where I was volunteering, which was, I'll say, a tourist attraction in Seattle. Not the one you're thinking of, probably, but a tourist attraction in Seattle. And I was hired, and so I started working retail. And it was interesting to go from going someplace as a volunteer to going to that same place for a paycheck. Um, but I couldn't believe my first check because it was three figures. Back then, minimum wage was $5.15 an hour, and we're talking 1998. But my job paid $5.41 an hour. So by the time I got back to school in the fall, everybody else was making minimum wage. Some people might have even been making less because of labor laws and how they were then for minors. But I was making 541 and I was commuting. So I was raised in the suburbs, but I was going into Seattle every weekend to work at my job. So I had to make sure all my homework was done during the week so that I would still be able to keep that job and do what I liked and earn my own money. I immediately started buying my own clothes. And I'm not really sure that that was a decision that was consciously made by either me or my mom, but it was kind of like, okay, you've got your own money, you're responsible for clothes. Or I just started buying them and then it just kind of became the norm. So I didn't. My mom would still buy my shoes, and she would still buy like if I needed like a winter coat or something like that, she would pay for that. But jeans, chinos, shirts, all of that was my own thing. Underwear, socks, I that came out of my paycheck essentially. So I never complained about it, and I think the reason is because I was glad that I had some agency in my own life. This was my money, these were my decisions, and I didn't buy anything outrageous, nothing that my mom would veto, like you can't wear that, So uh, that was my experience with my first paycheck. Is what I really started spending my money on was clothes, and I think some of that was maybe a little bit of not necessarily guilt, but wanting to ease the burden on my mom. She had retired in 1997 at a very young age because she just couldn't handle the stress anymore. But that put her on a fixed income, and she still had a teenager to raise. So I took on the burden of paying for my own clothes. Around the same time, I also started to think of how I was going to pay for college. Um, I didn't have a college fund. So, or rather, I did at one point, but that college fund was used to pay off debt from the divorce. So there was no more money. And my mom had been very upfront with me about that. Just like, you can continue to live at home, but I can't help you with tuition, fees, books, extracurriculars, anything like that. So I had to figure that out on my own. One way that I decided that I was going to pay for college was to do Running Start my senior year of high school. So I don't know how common this is in other states, but in the state of Washington, which is where I grew up, there is a program called Running Start where juniors and seniors, high school juniors and seniors, can take classes at community college, and the state will pay for the tuition, and you essentially earn double credit. So you earn college credit and high school credit at the same time. The state does not pay for books. They don't pay for fees. They don't pay for extracurriculars, but the tuition is covered 100%. And you get priority registration. So I said, yes, please. And so my senior year, I didn't take any classes at the high school. Some people do a hybrid, but I was ready to be out of there. So I took all my classes at the community college. To this day, I regret not starting it in my junior year. I think the experiences that I had my junior year, well, some of them were terrific, some of them not so much. Some of them were really downright scary because Columbine happened when I was a junior in high school, and that was a scary time to be a high school student. Not so much because you thought that it would happen at your school, because you really can't live that way, but just the climate of fear that it created, especially in administrators, and everything got locked down, and it was just yeah, it was not a good experience. But that was the latter half of the year. I had some really good times my junior year, but just not enough that would have offset um, the experience of getting running started in my junior year. So I probably would have been able to finish my associates by the time that I graduated high school, but neither here nor there. So I decided to do Running Start, and that was fantastic. And when I finished that, I thought, okay, when I finished high school, graduated high school, I thought, okay, in the fall, I'm going to go back to community college and finish my associate's degree. And then hopefully by then, I would have an idea of what it was that I wanted to do, because I really still didn't have a clue. I was working a different job by then. I'd left the tourist attraction. I ended up going back there eventually. But I'd left that job, and I'd had a couple of other low wage jobs, but just still no real direction. And then, not long after I graduated high school, my mom got sick with breast cancer. And that was rough. It was aggressive. And so she did radiation, she did surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy, plus the pill they make you take, tamoxifen, I think it's called. So she did the whole gamut of treatments with that, and she beat it. But it was scary, and it meant, okay, I'm not going back to school. Got to take care of mom. So I put college on hold. I, quit my job and got a different job that would allow me more flexibility. So that was that year. Um, Eventually, I went back to, and this was in 2000. Eventually, I did go back um, to my old job at the tourist attraction and stayed there for a while. And then I picked up another job shelving books at the local library. Well, not really shelving them, but I'll just say handling books at the local library. And I loved that job. I loved my coworkers. I loved the place where I worked. It was comfortable, it was familiar, and I thought, this is what my career is supposed to be. This is what I want to do. And so I stayed there for several years. Well, a couple years anyway. And then it was 2003, and I turned 21 in 2003. And I'd already gone back to school. And oh, that was another thing. So I'd gone back to school in 2002. I thought, okay, I better get my butt in gear and at least finish my associates. So I did, and I filled out the FAFSA, and they weren't going to help me. Hardly at all. They would give me enough money to pay for tuition, but still, I would have to pay all books out of pocket, living expenses out of pocket, meals out of pocket, fees out of pocket, everything, supplies out of pocket. It was literally just barely enough to cover tuition. I think I had about $7 or $8 left over after I paid tuition. So that went on a credit card. And that is really what started my journey into credit card debt. But there was no other way. I didn't qualify for more student aid. I had a job, but I was, I had a sick mom at home, and I was helping her. And so, um, I just thought, okay, I'll get a credit card, and I'll put whatever I can afford on the credit card. And then that quickly grew, right? The balance quickly grew. So then more and more of my money was going toward paying the minimums on the credit cards, because I had a usurious interest rate even back then. It was probably over 20%. And so that was taking my paycheck to pay back the credit card, but the balance wasn't going anywhere. In fact, it was only going up. And the more of my paycheck it took, the more things went on the credit card. And if you've been in credit card debt, you probably know how that cycle goes, especially when you're living close to the edge. But I didn't have any other choice except to work more. But if I worked more, then I couldn't go to school. So it was really a no-win situation. But that is where my credit card debt initially started to come from. And I was disappointed that I didn't get more in the way of loans from the government, because as expensive and as dangerous as student loans are, putting your college education on a credit card is even worse, in my opinion. And I didn't want to do it, but I felt I needed to. So, the light at the end of the tunnel for me was that if I stayed where I was working at the library, when I was ready to go to library school, which is a graduate school program, it's a master's degree, they would pay for it. They would pay for all the tuition. So 2003 comes along, I turn 21, and my mom says to me, "You have to get a different job because you need health insurance." I had to get off her health insurance by the time I turned 22. This is before the Affordable Care Act. So if you were a dependent child and you were on your parents' insurance, by the time you turned 22, you had to have your own. Now, had I known then what I know now, I would have gone on what's called Washington Basic Health, or what was called Washington Basic Health. It's basically Medicaid, and stayed at the job that I loved. But I didn't know anything. And so I thought, okay, I'll have to find a full time job, one that has insurance benefits. And that really changed the trajectory of my whole life. And it also impacted, again, my relationship with money. So that is something that I will talk about more next week. I'll talk about my first full time gig, how I got put on the career path that I'm still on today, and how my relationship with money evolved once I was earning enough to essentially cover expenses, but still not being able to do it. So stay tuned for that next week. For now, if there's any time left with the sticker book, I will just fill it in with music. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below so that I know you were here. And until I see you in the next one, take care.